The importance of shoemaking in Massachusetts is significant. It was one of the foundational bases of our state. It started with these shoemakers working in 10-footer shoe shops. They were small buildings, generally 12 by 12, but they were called 10-footers and came in every size and shape. And they were embedded in residential neighborhoods and along main streets, and there were hundreds and hundreds of them all over greater Boston. My husband built me a replica 10-footer shoe shop that is in the backyard of our residential neighborhood, and every one of my neighbors now knows that this is where and how art is made. Growing up north of Boston in Massachusetts, which has its own characteristics as a culture or society, it never occurred to me that you didn't learn something in a school. So when I wanted to learn shoemaking, I just looked for schools. And the schools that I found were in Europe for the most part, in France and in Italy, and they were completely design-based. I went to architecture and art school, so I had design for 5 years. I didn't want to go to 4 years of a design school to learn to be a shoe designer. I wanted to be a shoemaker and couldn't find it. I was very frustrated, but persistent and determined, and I'd keep looking. A friend of mine sent an article from Vogue magazine, of all places, about a shoemaking school in England called Cordwainers College. And that was it. I looked this place up. That was what I had been looking for and couldn't find. And it was, a A to Z, full comprehensive shoe construction course. It was hands-on. They offered a condensed, intensive version of the full year of instruction without all the practice time. And it was a 9 to 5, 5 days a week over a summer. So I went to England for that and learned shoe construction. And I naively thought, okay, I will learn this, I will come back home to Massachusetts, and I will be a shoemaker. And at the end of that course, the teacher said, if you want to be a bespoke maker, which is what you're saying you want to be, this isn't how you do it. You apprentice with a shoemaker, and for a long time, because it's really hard, it's labor intensive, it's complex, and it takes a long time to learn how to do every one of these processes, how to hold the tools, how to all these things that we are not teaching you. But I came back to Massachusetts where we have no more shoemakers. And then the Boston Globe did an article on this Western bootmaker. I knew nothing about cowboy boots or Western boots, but he was in Massachusetts. And so I looked him up, called him and said, I just went to the shoemaking school. Can I come and talk to you? And he just said, absolutely. We set a Saturday. He gave me the entire Saturday. I mean, he spent hours and hours telling me all about his bootmaking history, showing me all the things in his shop, talking about cowboy boots, of which I knew nothing. And it was just, this is it. I mean, it was this, this is what I want to do. And I was like, great, can you train me? And he said, no, absolutely not. So even though he said no in the beginning, this bootmaker did agree to teach me in the end. And I trained with him for over several years, but the information that he passed on to me and the techniques and the vast amount of knowledge that's behind every single decision, whether it's material or tool or process or technique, and where those things come from, were just absolutely invaluable, and there's no other way to get it than to get it from somebody passing it on to you. You slowly want to be cutting against.
Let me get the angle.
Sarah and I met at a RISD alumni event. She was producing welted construction side seam boots, and I wanted to learn that process. I instantly asked, could I come see her shop and see what she does, and then had the opportunity to apply for this grant program together.
And now you peel the vamp all the way back.
My process is to document pieces of information that I'm learning through photos and written notes so that I understand all of the steps in order to do the process again. There's two outcomes: a pair of boots that fit me to my measurements that I have learned how to make from pattern to last to the finished boot. The other piece is a step-by-step guide with photos and notes, all annotated, of the entire process of boot making from the apprentice's perspective. One of the measurements of the foot is to take a pedograph, which is an indentation of the bottom of the foot, and all of the information from that translates to critical measurements that you need to understand building and shaping the last. So I created a diagram of the pedograph and all of the different areas and what they meant in order to understand how to modify the last.
So with Diana, she is an absorber of information, an absorber of technique, an absorber of traditions, and respects them and note takes and records the things that she learns in such a way that she is taking all this information and this tradition and this lineage of bootmaking and the little bits of shoemaking that have come in from different sources to my lexicon of knowledge and recording it all. So she is learning all this, but also recording it in a way that is from the perspective of someone learning rather than what we typically get. If there is any kind of book on shoemaking or book on bootmaking, it's always from somebody who's done it for a really long time. And what I find is so exciting and different than in how she is doing is that it has all the details of the things somebody learning is recording. So to me, this is a fabulous program because that wouldn't have been possible without the support of the Mass Cultural Council. And it's also because it's my first time doing an apprentice, I hope the first time of several. It's this great way to see how I would do like a more mature or different or evolved version of this apprenticeship in order to keep spreading that bubble of knowledge around Massachusetts.